This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Welcome to Late Boomers, our podcast guide to creating your third act with style, power, and impact. Hi, I'm Kathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Join us as we bring you conversations with successful entrepreneurs, entertainers, and people with vision who are making a difference in the world.
Everyone has a story, and we'll take you along for the ride on each interview, recounting the journey our guests have taken to get where they are, inspiring you to create your own path to success. Let's get started. Hello, I'm Kathy Worthington. Welcome to our latest episode of Late Boomers. Today we have as our special guest, Philip Pape, owner and head coach of Wits and Weights, a top 25 nutrition podcast and nutrition lifestyle coaching business.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Philip is a husband, father, and techie with a passion for strength training and nutrition science. We're going to have some fabulous tips from him on building muscle and losing fat. Welcome, Philip.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you.
Thanks. Tell us about your background and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, so most of my life, I was not very athletic. I was not into sports or anything like that. And throughout my 20s and 30s, I was an engineer and a family man, right? So I got married when I was about 25, 26, had a couple girls, 2 daughters, and throughout my 30s and 40s, I did everything I possibly could do to try to lose weight, improve my body composition, improve my physique, eat better. I tried all the diets. I tried the, keto and Atkins and Slim Fast even back in the day, intermittent fasting. I did CrossFit for almost a decade, so many things, and nothing really worked. And it wasn't until I was about to turn 40, we're talking 2019, when I finally started to discover some things that actually worked in the realm of strength training and later on nutrition. And we can get into some of the details there, especially for the particular audience we want to address with women over 50. But when I was about turning 40, COVID hit, right? COVID hit, the pandemic shut us down, the gym shut down. I was without any equipment, without a coach. And I had just started that journey of discovering how to get strong, how to build muscle. And it was that year where I dived in and I started listening to podcasts, watching videos, reading books, treating this like the skill that it needs to be. Just like when you want to improve, public speaking skill or get better at your job or at your relationship, these are all skills that we need to get better at. But most people don't know what to do. Many of us think we do. Many of us are very hardworking people with careers and families who go to the gym and we do the diets and still don't necessarily get the results we want. And so something is missing in that equation. And so I finally figured that out through what I like to call evidence-based fitness, evidence-based nutrition, by, following individuals, experts, reading papers, reading books, all that. And I went through my first, I'll call it transformation, over about a year and a half, where I built muscle for the first time that I never could do before, saw a little definition in my clothes, things like that. And then after I gained way too much weight than I wanted to doing that, I learned about nutrition that allowed me to lose some fat in a pretty short period of time, getting into the 2021 timeframe. So I was very excited, of course. My wife was as well. And I'm like, is this going to stick? Because so many of us go through weight loss journeys or different things, and we can't maintain them. And it stuck because what I was doing was sustainable. What I was doing actually worked. I understood how to engineer my body. And that's the term I like to use, is physique engineering. And once you did that, you get a level of clarity and confidence in the future. So late 2021, I started my podcast. Now, a lot of people, I understand, start podcasts either as a hobby or to support their business. And I was doing it as a passion project at the time. In fact, it was a Toastmasters project, if you're familiar with that organization, public speaking, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I started the podcast. I said, I went through this transformation, really excited, wanted to share. I love to talk, as you can tell. And that started to take off, not take off. I mean, I probably had, 0 listeners from episode 1, 0 listeners, and then it probably went up from there. You know how it is a podcast. And after about 10, 15 episodes, I had my first interview guest. She was a power lifter who was also a coworker of mine. And after the interview, or not after the interview, before the interview, she binged my show. This is the way she put it. She's like, I started listening to the show. I binged all the episodes because what you were sharing finally gave me understanding and clarity on why the things my coaches tell me to do work. So she had a nutrition coach, she had a powerlifting coach. She was a competitive powerlifter, and she did all the things they told her to do, and they worked, but she didn't know why. And she said, your podcast helped me understand that. I said, so something clicked, that education is so important, because even if you stumble on the right thing, you may not know how to repeat it if you don't have that education.
Yeah.
So she then said, do you coach? Because I need a nutrition coach. My contract's expiring. And I said, let me look into that. So I took messy action. I got certified. We're talking, 3-4 months later, I went through the whole process working with a bunch of free clients, and I became a nutrition coach at that point. But since that time, the business has grown, but more importantly, I've gotten to see so many people do what I went through and have that smile and that those bright eyes of clarity and knowledge that after the 6 months we worked together, they could literally, share it to 10 other people and have them do the same thing ad infinitum, right? It pays off exponentially. So that's kind of my rambling story.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I'm only one episode into your podcast, and I've learned a lot. So I'm going to listen to a lot more.
Awesome.
And I am too. You mentioned women over 50, and we know you work with many age groups, but let's talk about women over 50. Is it possible to build muscle after the age of 50? And how do you get started, and what are the benefits?
So when we talk about muscle, it's really helpful to understand what happens to our bodies as we age to then see what we can do about it. As we age, right, we tend to find that our metabolism slow down, right? We tend to find that maybe we gain weight more easily, right? And there's all these symptoms that make us feel like, well, things aren't quite what they were when we were in our 20s.
Yeah.
And when you break it down and you see why that is, it almost always comes down to muscle mass. It really doesn't have anything to do with age or gender. It really has to do with how much muscle you have on your frame. Because from the age of 40 on, you lose between 3 and 8% of your muscle every decade. So if you looked at like an image of somebody's thigh, like a cross section, and you compared a 40-year-old to a 7-year-old, you're going to see the same diameter, but you're going to see a lot more fat and less muscle as they age. Like the composition changes. So there's more and more fat, less and less muscle. You're weaker. That means your bone density gets smaller, chance of osteoporosis, chance of frailty, chance of injury, and all those things happen. And we think it's inevitable, but it's not. So the question is, what can you do about it? Strength training, resistance training, which we're going to get into, is the way not only to stop that, but to reverse it. And you are never too old to start. I've seen 80-year-olds lift a barbell for the first time in their entire life. They lifted any weight in their entire life, and be able to do a deadlift and be able to go up in weight every session and get stronger. And all of a sudden they can get off the toilet, or they can, do the very basics. Then they can start going upstairs. Then they can, actually maybe even compete. I don't know. There's like a whole range, but the point is, yes, the answer is absolutely yes. It's never too late to start. And I don't know if you've heard the adage, the best time to start is 20 years ago. The second best time to start is today.
And now.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
Do you think women over 50 can get bulky from strength training?
Yeah, this is a long held myth. I don't know how common. I don't know how common do you guys think it is? If I could just
I don't see any people over 50 that are bulky. So
okay, that's one perspective. And that could be because people aren't
fat on them.
There you go. They're bulky in a different way.
Muscle.
Yeah,
and they're bulgy, but not bulky.
That's right. Bare bellies and thighs.
There you go.
But you mentioned somebody 80, and I'm wondering, is it dangerous for women over 50 to lift heavy weights?
No. First of all, the bulky thing, I was joking about it, but in reality, I like to say that it's hard for me as a man to try to get bulky. Like that takes a lot of work for me to try to get bulky, let alone a woman. And women who are looking for that physique that that generally is, I don't want to say the ideal body type, because there's so many different body types. There's different levels of what's considered beautiful, right? It's really what you want. But generally that idea of like trimmer waist, your clothes fit better, you feel better, all that, it comes from muscle, right? And so when you see a lean or toned woman, right, it tends to be muscle. The nice thing about having muscle is you can actually carry a higher body fat, a higher weight, the more muscle you carry. So if I showed you a picture of a woman who's been training for, let's say, 2 or 3 years, she probably has put on, 10, 15 pounds of muscle, where a man might put on 25 in that time frame, training hard, training properly. She's going to probably be 30 pounds heavier than you think, 20 to 30 pounds heavier than you think, based on looking at her, because muscle is denser, right? And muscle sort of pushes out the fat a little bit and kind of tightens the look. So anyway, you're not going to get bulky. Long story short, as far as whether it's dangerous, I think lifting weights makes things safer and reduces your chance of injury. So this is the way I like to say it, because when you go and you pick up that box to put it up in the trunk of the car, when you go to pick up your grandkids, you're applying a load to your body that the older you get, the weaker you are, the more chance of injury you have from that.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
Or if you fall, you have a chance of breaking something or tearing a tendon, right? But if you're stronger, any part of you is stronger, you're going to actually have a safer existence, because now you could fall and be more resilient, or not even fall because you have better balance.
Exactly. Not even
Right.
catch yourself before you fall.
But does it have to be the weights like in the gym with the barbells, or can you just do, free weights?
Yeah,
Or
that's a great question.
Or Pilates.
Yeah. So we need to separate principles from methods, right? So I don't know, again, another adage, like there are many methods are many, principles are few, right? Like there's a lot of ways to get from A to B, but the principles are the same. So I want to split the two up. The principle of strength training I'm talking about is placing a load on your body and increasing that load over time so that you get stronger, so that your body adapts to the load and you get stronger. The method to do that, there are many. You could do body weight, bands, dumbbells, machines, barbells, right? But the principle has to be satisfied, that you are adding more stress to your body every time, just a little bit. So the reason I personally like barbells, for example, is they're symmetrical, they're bilateral. You know what I mean? Like you use both your legs, both your arms. They're very adjustable. You can go from a very light, like 15-pound dumbbell or barbell, or even a broom handle if you're like weaker and older and you've never done it before. And you could always build up from there. And you could add like plates that just go up a little bit at a time each time. It's very hard to do that with dumbbells, because dumbbells skip like 5 pounds at a time and you only have so many that you can choose from. Machines you can do it with that have like the little sliders and the weight stacks. But again, you have to use the right machines, because some machines are not going to be very effective. And then body weight and bands can work, but you might get stronger than they can challenge you at some point. So if you start with bands, after a month or two, if you're doing that, they may not be strong enough to let you progress. So the key is progressive overload. However you do that, the methods are many, and that's how you make progress.
Well, how do you prevent stress on your back? And also, this is an image I have in my mind, but can a woman over 50 get abs?
Okay, so I'll 2 questions, right? One about the back and one about the abs. Okay.
Yeah.
So the back, I love this one. Would you rather have a weak bad back or a strong bad back?
Well, okay.
I'd rather have a strong one.
Okay. And the reason I say it that way is because humans inevitably over the age of 30, we didn't evolve to live this long. We just didn't. So we're built good enough to last until like our 30s and 40s. Beyond that, all sorts of things start to deteriorate, including our back, our spine, and our, bulging discs and deteriorating discs and things like that. It happens to everybody. If you took an MRI of a 45-year-old or 50-year-old, everybody will have something on there and likely not have symptoms. Very few will have actual symptoms. Something like 60 or 70% of people. It's crazy.
Wow.
So low back health is a big concern in the Western world because we sit all day. And that's the main reason it's a concern. We sit all day and we don't squat. We don't use our body the way like a baby or a kid would use it anymore. We just sit all day. So if you strengthen the back, if you strengthen the muscles that go along the back, like the rope-like muscles that go along your spine, right? What am I? I'm forgetting the term, and I use it all the time. But anyway, you do that with things like squats and deadlifts. Okay.
Oh.
Why does a deadlift make that strong? Because a deadlift is picking something off the ground. When you think about it, when you pick up something off the ground, you're hinging your hips and your back is really tight as you pick the thing up. It stays tight, right? Like you pick it up. That is an isometric contraction that strengthens those muscles. So the higher you go over time and load, on the barbell, dumbbells, whatever, the more strong those get. And guess what? You're supporting now your spine. You're supporting your spine. So now you have a less chance of an injury with your spine. Your back feels healthier. So a lot of people that have low back pain, deadlifting and getting strong often alleviates the pain.
What about squats?
As well as walking and moving. Yeah.
What about squats?
Squats as well. It's a similar idea, right? Because you're using your legs and hips, but your back is staying strong as you go down and up. Now, poor form can definitely cause issues. So anybody listening who wants to get into lifting should definitely work with a personal trainer, a coach, or a community of lifters or whatever to give you that feedback to make sure you're doing it right. But then once you got the form down, then it's just a matter of putting the pedal to the metal and getting stronger over time.
Yeah. Well, what?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. What happens to
you asked about abs too.
I did.
About abs too,
don't abs relate to back strength?
Yeah. No, that's the perfect thing you're asking, right? Because the abs, both the surface abs, right, the rectus abdominis that we all like to look at with the six pack and the obliques, and what some people call the deep core, which is like the muscles a layer deep into the body. All of those are stabilizers, right? So when you do a deadlift or when you do any full body movement, really, deadlift, squatting, pressing overhead, bench pressing, if you do them right, you're using your whole kinetic chain in your whole body. And so your back and your stabilizer muscles are used all the time. This is why I don't like certain machines that prevent you from doing that. Like, for example, the machines in gyms where you kind of sit down and you're in a restricted range of motion and you're kind of moving like in one plane, right? It prevents you from using your stabilizer muscles. So that's a great question. That's why I like free weights, more than other stuff.
Well, talk about metabolism. What happens after the age of 50 for men and women?
So metabolism's a big topic, and I love to talk about it. So slow me down if I talk too much about it. So we like to say that our metabolism slowed down, right? Oh, my metabolism has slowed down. I can't eat what I ate in my 20s, right? If I eat the same that I ate in my 20s, I'm going to gain weight. So a few things are going on. First of all, we're probably less active as we age. So you got to account for that, right? We probably have more stress as we age because we have more obligations. But the most important thing is that we've lost muscle mass. So going back to my very first point, metabolism, if you took two women, same age, same height, same weight, but one had 10% less body fat, that woman would burn more calories. Okay. On average, right? And there's individual variation with everything. But if you took like every woman in the world that was exactly that size, the only difference between their metabolism would be associated with their body fat, with their muscle. Same thing, right? More fat means less muscle and vice versa. So if we know that adding muscle increases our metabolism like permanently, meaning, your resting metabolic rate can go up. Now it's not massive. It's probably like 100 calories for every 10 pounds of muscle, right? But muscle has all these other protective effects that we've talked about for your bone density, for your heart rate, for a million other things. So, yes, your metabolism will decline if you don't have muscle. So strength training, get muscle and it'll go back up.
Well, why should we focus on performance instead of weight loss to get lean?
Weight loss is, would you say it's probably the number one outcome that is sold by the fitness industry?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's a problem because weight on the scale is one tiny metric, right? And when you focus on it and we tie weight and being at a certain number to ideal body type, or body image, standards, we exclude everything else that supports our health. We exclude how much muscle you have. We exclude our blood pressure and our heart rate. We exclude our hunger. We exclude all these things. All we care about is that number on the scale. What it ends up doing is crash dieting, yo-yo dieting, restrictive dieting, right? This is extremely common. Most women try 120 diets in their lifetime.
Ooh.
It's like it is. And you could if you thought of any given year, how many, in one year you try multiple diets sometimes, and you kind of add it up. It adds up to a lot of diets from the time you're like 14 or whenever you start to get, body image concerns that hammered in from society all the way till, the day you die. You could believe that it's 120 diets. And so when I say, let's focus on performance instead of weight loss, it ties into the whole muscle building thing. If you came to me as a client, you're like, I want to improve my physique, I would say, okay. Or if you said you wanted to lose weight, I'd say, well, what do you really want, right? Do you really want to lose weight? Or do you want the feeling that losing weight you think is going to give you? And then it usually comes down to, well, no, I want to feel better. I want to look better in my clothes. I want to be a role model for my kids. I want to play with my grandkids, on and on and on. Or maybe I just want to walk up the stairs, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then we say, okay, then it's really not about the number on the scale, right? It's about your capability and how you feel and look. So then we say, let's focus on performance and strength. Let's treat you like an athlete. Okay. You're 55. You've never lifted before. Doesn't matter. You're going to now have the mindset of an athlete with me. Okay. And we're going to lift weights. It's not going to be that many hours in the gym, 3 days a week for less than an hour. You don't have to do much cardio at all. Just go walk. And then we're going to focus on the nutrition side of things. When you start getting 5 pounds more in your squat each week or a new record on your bench press, and you check in with me and you're like, I just benched 70 pounds. I never thought I could do that before. And that excitement for lifting instead of dieting, all of a sudden we want to fuel that lifting with how we eat. So having a performance mindset, then you say, okay, well, then I know I need a bunch of protein. I know carbs are actually important. I'm not going to cut carbs anymore because they help me. They help my hormones. They help my recovery and performance. I actually need more calories. Most of my women clients, when they start with me, they're under eating and they need to eat more. And all of a sudden, what happens? You start to lift more. You start to build muscle. Your waist size comes down. Your fat comes down. The weight on the scale doesn't even change. And you're starting to get exactly what you wanted. And it has nothing to do with weight loss.
That's great.
Hopefully I painted that picture for you.
Yeah.
As to why we like performance.
But even with the weight staying the same on the scale, you could look better in your clothes, right?
Yes, exactly. Because your body composition has improved.
I've seen dancers, thin, lean dancers, and when they get on the scale, they weigh a lot more than you think they weigh. It's pretty amazing. But talk about diet, if you would, and especially those going through peri and post menopause.
Yeah. So, there is no perfect diet, right? The way you eat has to be individualized for you. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be complicated. It doesn't mean you have to go buy some book that tells you here's your blood type or here's your body type and here's what foods you eat. I'd like to kind of step back and talk about the difference between restrictive or rigid dieting and flexible dieting. All right. So when you think of a diet, what do you think of? Think of like keto, right?
Usually eliminating carbs and sugar.
Eliminating carbs and sugar.
Well, you had that great diet of only to eliminate all things that are white, meaning sugar, bread,
there you go.
Pasta.
Potatoes.
Yes.
Potatoes.
And so what do these diets have in common? Elimination, restriction.
Right.
Yeah.
You have rules.
They make you feel bad.
They make you feel bad if you eat them, right?
Yeah.
Is what you're saying? Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
all you think about is eating them.
Because you feel bad because you can't eat them.
Yeah, exactly, right. And as humans, we don't like that.
Them, you feel bad because you can't eat them.
Because you can't.
Exactly, and then all you think about is eating them.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, right? So rigid dieting, they've done studies comparing two groups. One group has a rigid diet where you can eat this and you can't eat this. And the other group is told you need to stick within these calories and protein, calories and macros, but you can eat whatever you want. Well, guess what happened? The group with the rigid diet, felt restricted, like they couldn't do what they wanted to do, and they rebelled and they binged. It led to eating disorders. It led to weight regain, right? And a poor relationship with food. And because counterintuitively, it's sold as the opposite. It's sold as this simple, sexy thing, like the carnivore diet. All you have to do is eat animal products. You'll be fine. You'll lose a bunch of weight. You're good. But you realize how limiting that is and how disempowering it is. They're telling you exactly what to do. The flexible diet, where yes, you might count calories, and I know people use that as a bad term, but you're tracking what you eat. You're tracking how much and what constitutes what you eat, but you get to choose whatever you want. That group, they found, had a good relationship with food because they had choice. They could manage their weight for a long time, and they could sustain that diet for years and years and years. So that's the real difference when we talk about rigid versus flexible dieting. And so if you want to be specific for our population here, women, peri-post-menopause, oftentimes the hormonal issues that we see are not just from the natural imbalances that are occurring. They're from all the stress in your life. They're from the stress of, actual life stress, family and obligations, and taking on so many mental and physical burdens for your family. But they're also from maybe doing too much in the gym, like too much cardio, too much running. Some women get into that mode of like the Peloton, and, maybe it's sports, maybe it's usually running. Running's a big one. Okay. Or spinning or something like that. It may be not sleeping enough, right? Because again, you're just doing too much. Maybe you're working a lot, whatever. You don't sleep enough. And all those stressors cause your body to compensate hormonally to conserve calories.
Oh.
And so the very first thing I ask anyone to do who's listening is track your food for a while. Just track your food for a few weeks. I like MacroFactor. I think we were talking about that before we started recording. It's a good app for that, but there's others. That's the one I like. I think some of them actually, some of those apps out there will backfire. So you got to find the right one. The right one that doesn't judge you for when you miss your, calorie targets. Track your food for a while, know what's going into your mouth, and then eat enough so that you are maintaining your weight. Now, what that means for a lot of women is they're thinking they're eating the right amount, or maybe that they're dieting. And it usually requires increasing calories in the form of carbohydrates and protein. Most women, most men, everybody undereats their protein by a wide margin. And then a lot of people are on low carb diets. So they've also been restricting their carbs, and they have a lot of fat. And there's nothing wrong with fat, but it's just taking the place of carbs. And carbs are where you get your energy and your recovery, and they help your hormones and so on. So eat more protein and carbs. See how you start to feel. If you're in peri-post-menopause, that combined with strength training could be the remedy that you need to get the hormones back in balance without medication, without treatments. And I've seen this with my clients who've had those issues: DHEA, progesterone, testosterone. They're on creams, they're on synthetic T3, like you name it, the whole gamut, right? And their blood work starts to improve to where they might be able to come off of those. In some cases, not all. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
How much protein are you telling women to eat?
Yeah. So the rule of thumb,
like some kind of gauge.
Yeah. The rule of thumb is between 0.8 and 1 gram per pound of weight, body weight. So to be more precise,
1 gram.
0.8 to 1. Okay. So 1 is like the rule of thumb, but you don't have to eat that much. You could eat a little bit less than that. So 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of your target body weight. So just to keep it simple, if a woman weighs 150 pounds and isn't trying to gain or lose weight, just wants to eat better, they would aim for like 120 to 150 grams of protein.
A day.
Yes.
That's a lot. How do you get all that?
It sounds like a lot. It sounds like a lot to most people because you're probably getting 60. If you think of how most people eat, you have a light breakfast with very little protein. You may not have snacks, or if you do, they're like carby snacks, right? Or carby fat kind of junk food snacks. Let's admit it. Lunch is like maybe a sandwich or maybe a salad, again, with not a lot of protein. And then dinner's where you have your protein.
Right.
Again, thinking of the American standard kind of thing, you have a bunch of chicken or beef or something. And so you get like maybe 30 grams of protein all day. And then you top it off with another 40 at dinner, and you end up with 60 to 80 grams. And you need almost double that in general.
Wow.
Okay. Here's what protein does for you. Protein is filling, right? protein helps build and preserve muscle. You need more of it the older you are, and if you're a woman. So women need more than men. Older people need more than younger people.
That's a question I wanted to ask you.
Yeah. Yes, because your ability to synthesize protein becomes less efficient as you age.
Yeah,
men and women, but women, it goes faster.
I think I know the answer to this based on a couple things you said, but is cardio an effective form of exercise? You kind of sounded like it maybe isn't.
Yeah, so here's cardio. Let's talk cardio. So we're going to split up walking from the rest of cardio. So walking, you can do as much as you want and no issues. Walking's great for you. It's the form of cardio that I recommend to everybody. 8 to 12,000 steps a day is a really solid number, but whatever's more than you're getting now is usually good. But cardio in the form of running, biking, all these other things, there's a limit to which you can do that before it starts to become a negative, before it starts to become a stressor. So the rule of thumb I like is however many hours a week you lift, limit to half that time for cardio, and you're fine. So if you lift three days a week for an hour, that's 3 hours. Don't do more than an hour and a half of cardio. So I'm not saying it can't be used at all. But there's a few things that happen with cardio. First of all, let's take running. It tears up your muscle fibers when you run, just a little bit. So it impedes recovery from the day to day when you're lifting weights. So you lift weights, you tear some muscles, you sleep, you recover. 2 days later, you come back into the gym with a little bit more muscle tissue and you're stronger. Running can interrupt that process a bit, just a bit, if you do too much of it. Second, running can be stressful just from a physical stress, right? You're pounding the pavement. You're keeping the heart rate high. We know cardiovascular health is excellent, and I'm not discounting. That's why I'm okay with some cardio and walking. But too much of it could actually cause stress. Like it could increase your cortisol, right? Your stress hormone, and prevent it from declining like it needs to during the day, leading to stress. Stress makes fat loss harder. Okay. Third thing, if you do too much cardio, your body thinks, hey, this person needs to be an endurance machine, not a muscle building machine. Therefore, the body conserves energy. So the more calories you're trying to burn, the more your body's fighting back and trying to compensate and conserve. So now every extra 100 calories you burn might only actually burn 50. And then the next 100 might only burn 25. And so you're doing all this extra running for no reason. Your metabolism is kind of shrinking. And now you're just defeating the whole purpose of why people think they're running. So that's my take on it.
I think more and more experts are coming to that conclusion. I'm hearing that around a little bit more where we didn't hear that before. Running was always the answer. Right?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that, resistance training, kind of the complete package, is becoming more well known as but a lot of people still do it. I mean, I know that because most of my clients come in doing it and I say, let's just back off. And most people, I'll tell you, most women that come to me and I say that, they kind of, what, or they smile like, okay, you don't want me to do all this extra cardio, fine with me.
Yeah, no kidding. I would be really happy.
Yeah, well, if you spend your 20s and 30s and 40s running, in your 50s, you're going to be at the doctor with having knee and hip replacements.
There's that too, yeah.
Yeah, so talk about intermittent fasting and if it's effective for weight loss and if it's good for you.
Intermittent fasting is one of those things where there's some truth in it and then there's all the mythology around it. And so what most people claim is that just like any diet, it's this magic elixir for losing fat, and that in this fasting window, let's define intermittent fasting first. It's fasting for a certain amount of time and then eating in a tighter window, which everyone does that anyway. When you sleep for 8 hours, that's fasting, and then you eat. But intermittent fasting, you usually extend that. So maybe you skip breakfast and eat a late lunch and then an early dinner, and now you're eating within like a 4 to 8 hour window. There are all these claims about fasting. It's going to increase your what's called autophagy, which is like cell recovery, I can't even define it, but it's like where your cells clean themselves out and kind of repair themselves. There's increase in growth hormone, they claim. There's all these claims that we find is actually a wash, meaning if you fast longer, you're gaining something here and sacrificing something over here, and it comes out to be a wash. When we talk about fat loss, what do we care about at the end of the day? We care about a calorie deficit, right? Can you induce a loss of fat because you're in a deficit. Intermittent fasting is equally effective as not intermittent fasting for doing that. Meaning a normal feeding schedule, breakfast, lunch, dinner with snacks, is just as effective as intermittent fasting. The one reason you would use intermittent fasting is if it's good for your lifestyle. So, and that, it doesn't have to be a permanent thing. So for example, if you came to me and we were eating a bunch of food and training and we're at maintenance, and then we say, okay, let's go into our fat loss phase. We're going to have to reduce calories a bit. Those calories might be so tight for you, not restrictive, but just kind of like on that edge of, I might get a little more hungry than I like. I'm going to cut out a meal and just squeeze the rest of the meals together. And the time that I'm not eating, my body's cool with it. And then when I'm eating, I get to have bigger meals. And so for my lifestyle, that allows me to stick with it. That would be why I use intermittent fasting. No other reason. So that's your answer.
I get it. And considering all that we've talked about, what would you say is the best overall approach for building muscle, losing fat, and improving your health and physique at any age?
Yeah, I think we touched on a lot of it. I think of it as a checklist. And with any of these checklists, you don't have to do everything on day one. So I want to make that clear to the listener. If you feel overwhelmed, if you're like, oh, this is just so much, and now I'm paralyzed with indecision, no. I would prioritize at the top some form of movement, right? And by movement, that could be walking. Like if you are just very sedentary and you're sitting down all day and getting 2,000 or 3,000 steps a day, and you can get 5,000 steps a day for the next few weeks by adding in a walk after your meals, go for it. That's awesome. That's going to lead you to get a little bit mentally refreshed and wanting to do more, right? And then you keep going. That's movement. The second thing is strength training. I mean, obviously, I've been talking about it the whole time. Any form of getting you to use those muscles, I'll tell you what, it feels great. It really feels great. And the excuse of like, I don't like to do it, it means you just haven't found the right way to do it for you. But find something that works for you. It could be in a class. It could be with a trainer. It could be with, a coach like me. It could be with anybody. Find a community, find a way that's going to make you enjoy it and get the results. So movement, strength training, and then nutrition. I would focus on protein. I would just focus on protein and getting enough, right? Because I don't want to give your listeners like the 20 things that I would do with a client, because that's just going to be overwhelming. So movement, training, protein, and then getting enough sleep. And we'll leave it at that. Trying to get at least 7 hours of sleep a day, which means 8 hours of sleep in bed. 8 hours in bed. Yeah.
Well, what would be the best protein for someone who doesn't really like to eat a lot of heavy protein?
Yeah, you kind of alluded to this earlier, and I didn't answer it. So to get enough protein, let's think of all the sources. We have meat, right? So we have beef, turkey, chicken, and pork. We have fish and seafood, which is very high in protein. So shellfish, all the different type of fish, salmon, halibut, whatever you like, tuna, mahi-mahi. And we have eggs, right? Eggs, egg whites, whole eggs, whatever, Then we have all the dairy products. So we have things like cottage cheese and Greek yogurt are really high in protein. And you can get different levels of fat depending on where you are in your nutrition right now. So you can get full fat, 2%, 1% fat free. Oikos makes a really good brand. It's like fat free with vanilla or whatever. And so that's dairy products, including milk. Milk could work as well. But again, you got to watch out for the fat. And then we have plant-based sources, right? So we have legumes, grains like oats, quinoa have a lot of protein. So if you have a really diverse diet, pretty much with whole foods, say 80% whole foods, because I'm not going to tell you to restrict all processed foods. I want you to have your indulgences. I want to have you have your donut or birthday cake, your glass of wine, whatever you like, fit it in there into the 10 or 20%, kind of like a budget. And then the rest of it is whole foods. And then the final thing is if you need a protein shake, most of my clients do have to have at least one protein shake a day just because you need so much. I usually take 1 or 2 a day myself around my workouts. So that would be whey protein. Or if you are a vegan or vegetarian, it could be pea rice blend. That's my favorite like vegan protein. And if you have an intolerance to either of those, you could get a beef isolate protein. So I think I covered the whole gamut. And so now all you have to do is figure out your day. How are you going to get 120 grams of protein? Right? Math.
Well, what about
4 snacks, 30 grams each.
What about nuts?
Okay, I'm glad you asked. So not the problem with, but like nuts and peanut butter and nut butters is they're very high in fat and not that high in protein. So I don't even think of them as a source of protein. I think of them as a good healthy fat. They don't have much protein. Having
Oh,
said that, I have peanut butter in my oatmeal every day because I love it.
Yeah, it's
yeah. I
good.
thought, oh, that sounds good with oatmeal. I haven't
It
tried that. I
Yeah,
love
it
peanut
does.
butter.
It sounds
just
good,
like a
but
half tablespoon. Yeah.
yeah. Sometimes this is going to be gross for some of our listeners, but peanut butter and cottage cheese is really good.
That does sound interesting. I've
I
had peanut
haven't
butter and
tried
Greek
that.
yogurt, but not
Well,
cottage cheese. But
well,
I could
it
see.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay, what is the biggest mistake people make when trying to improve their health and physique?
The biggest mistake. Oh, um, I think, let's see, there are so many because I've made them all. um, the first thing that comes to mind is not taking action. So where I'm going with this is, I talked at the very beginning of our interview that a lot of people know what they want, but they don't know how to get there. Right. And then they take action on these things that don't work, and they're really good at taking action. I think a lot of us are really like that. Like, we're not lazy people. Your listeners are not lazy. You're not lazy. So we can't use that. We don't want to use that as an excuse, but what's missing is the how. Now that you're armed with some information from this show, right, and you know some things at work and maybe dispelled some myths like the cardio myth. And if you're running on the treadmill every day hoping to lose weight, maybe that's not the effective way to do it. Now that you have the effective way to do it, what's stopping you from getting the results? Not by taking action on that. So when you take an action on something that works, what happens? It gives you a result, and that motivates you to do more.
Mm.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like that's a profound thing for me, because for years I did things that didn't work, felt like I was on the what do you call it? The wheel, the hamster
Yeah.
wheel.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, what is this? Like, I guess my body is just broken. My metabolism is broken. It's just me. Or for a lot of women, it's my hormones. It's my age. It's my metabolism. No, it's just not, you're not doing the right thing. That's all. And that's a good thing.
Mhm.
It's empowering, because once you have the right thing, taking action makes it easy because you'll get the result. So that's probably one of the mistakes people make. What do you guys think?
I think the next thing I was going to ask you is my problem is that
Okay.
people struggle with consistency
Yes.
when it comes to their diet and exercise habits. And how can we solve that problem? What's the best way to get over the mental hurdle of that?
Yes. I like to solve mental issues with physical ones.
Mm.
So
Okay.
where I'm going with this is, what prevents consistency? It's either you're not getting a result or you're not motivated, right? And as I just said, getting a result sometimes motivates you, but more often than not, it's a lack of awareness of what's going on. Like, what is the feedback loop? And so where I'm going with that is, take nutrition as an example. Are you tracking your food? If you just track your food for a few weeks, you're going to learn so much more about your eating habits than you have in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
You'll know, you'll see it right in front of you. It's just hard, cold data. Oh, I'm eating 2,000 extra calories on Saturday because of the nachos and the drinks, with my friends. We got to, I didn't realize I was eating that many more calories, even though I'm doing so well during the week. That's where I'm sabotaging my results. Well, guess what? That allows you to, now you have power, and you have to say, I'm going to make a change, and you're going to make the change, right? And then see how that goes. Same thing with lifting. A lot of people just go to the gym and randomly do stuff. But why don't you have the set of exercises you're going to do, how many sets, reps, how much weight you're going to do, and then you document it in a log or an app. And then for the next session on Wednesday, you say, okay, I need to go up a little bit of weight on all those lifts where I was successful. I'm going to plan that out, and I'm going to execute, and on and on and on. And that closes the feedback loop, because then, if it's not working, something has to change,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what else would you say to someone who feels like they just can't make progress? What is the one main thing you would say to them?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of reframing. So when they say I can't make progress, I'm gonna really want to peer into, like, what are you choosing to do or not to do, right?
Mm.
In other words, is it that you're working out religiously, sticking to your plan, and you're not making progress? Or is it just upstream? Like, are we just not doing the things? And let's work on those. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it's like a little bit of his tough love, to be honest, about not making excuses or not lying to ourselves. Let's say it that way. We don't want to lie to ourselves, and we do it every day. Like we lie to
Right.
ourselves more than we lie to anybody else. Let's be honest.
That's true.
Okay. And if you just ask yourself the question, if you're listening right now, ask yourself the question about whatever your problem is, whatever it is, outside of fitness, it doesn't matter. What do I know I should be doing that I'm not doing?
Mhm.
You know, what do I
Good
know
one.
I should be doing that
Good
I'm not
one.
doing? Yeah. Now, actually doing it, I get it, right? That's why people hire coaches in some cases. Like most of my clients have had trouble being consistent, sticking with it. And they hire me for two reasons. One, to get educated, because they're like, I just want to know what actually works. Please help me out. And number two, being consistent. Well, once you get educated and start tracking and become aware, the consistency part becomes a lot easier. It just does. Because you start getting quick wins, and you're like, okay, this works. Let me keep going. It's just kind
Well,
of closing
Philip,
that loop.
what
Yeah.
would you like our listeners to have as their main takeaway today?
The main takeaway is that you can vastly improve your quality of life, your health, your strength, your muscle at any age. And it will also transform your life physically and mentally and emotionally in ways you never thought possible. So get started right now. Get started today. By today, I mean write something down that you took away. Pause, go back. I don't know I forget if you do timestamps, but go find the information. Write it down now. What are you going to do tomorrow to get started? Are you going to track your steps and add 2,000 steps? Are you going to find a workout program? Whatever it is, do it.
Oh, I love that. I'm
right.
going on my walk after we finish talking.
See, I hope I motivated you too.
Thank
She's
you,
a really
Philip.
good walker.
Yeah.
Good. I love it. Walking's great.
Yeah. Our guest today on Late Boomers has been Philip Pape, owner of Wits and Weights, a nutrition podcast and nutrition lifestyle coaching business. You can learn a lot about weight loss and health by listening to the Wits and Weights podcast. Philip, can you tell our audience how they can reach you?
Sure. Definitely the podcast. As you just mentioned, you can follow it right now since you're listening to this one, Wits and Weights. You can find me on Instagram at Wits and Weights. And then I have a free metabolism assessment on my website, witsandweights.com.
Witsandweights.com.
I'm going to it right away.
I didn't see that
Awesome.
one. Yeah. And
Thank you.
We'd like to ask our listeners to please subscribe to our Late Boomers podcast on your favorite platform. And please give us a 5-star review. And you can also find us on YouTube on our Late Boomers podcast channel. Please subscribe there. We have over 150 episodes so far, and we give you a new one every week. So please follow us on Instagram at I am Kathy Worthington and at I am Mary Elkins and at Late Boomers. We always try to inform, entertain, and inspire you. Thanks again, Philip.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on Late Boomers, the podcast that is your guide to creating a third act with style, power, and impact. Please visit our website and get in touch with us at lateboomers.biz. If you would like to listen to or download other episodes of Late Boomers, go to ewnpodcastnetwork.com.
This podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other major podcast sites. We hope you make use of the wisdom you've gained here and that you enjoy a successful third act with your own style, power, and impact.